Yo, it's Guido coming back at you with a Tactics Talk. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for tuning in. I am back from D-Day Conneaut, and I have a great replay here because it's going to let us talk about something I've talked about in the past, and I love to bring this up, so we're going to revisit this. This is the standard. Someone sent me a replay. We got Fisherman Joe from Clan Babbins, and he sent me this replay, and it's a good replay. It ends up being a loss. He does a lot of damage, and it's the standard question, hey, what could I have done? Is there something to learn here? And there always is, even in a win. But that's not the point of the video. The point of the video is to talk about kind of a mindset that I have. And it's the idea that it is possible, you have to stick with me on this, it is possible to win all your games. When you say, hey, how could I have won this? Is it possible to have won this game? Yes. In a small sample size, it's very probable. Much more probable than a larger sample size. So it's the difference between possibility and probability. While it is possible to win all of your games, it is highly, highly improbable. And that is more or less a theoretical idea because you can get to a probability that is so small, it is basically impossible. And that's the whole big math deal. But I'm not talking about necessarily how is Guido going to tell you how to win every game? Because Guido said it's possible to win every game. If you just do what he says, then you will win every game. That's not the point. The point is to understand that, especially in smaller sample sizes, it is possible. And for any given game, as a sample size of 1, it is possible to win. Now the question is, how do I increase the probability of the win? That's where you come in and your tank and your tiering and how you play and your decisions and how it's set up, your crew, everything else. So that's what we're going to talk about as we go along here. The idea that, yes, it is possible for Fisherman Joe to win this game. The question is, how probable was it? And what are some of the decisions along the way that he could make? Now, we're going to do this as a first look. I haven't seen this, so we're just going to talk about it as we go. And we'll see what we come to at the end. But I think that's an important mindset when you're looking at your replays especially. And when you go into the game, obviously we all want to win, right? We look at it and we go, well, the probability of winning this is low. It's possible, but the probability is low based on our assessment of where we are in the team, how our players are. If we have XVM, we're paying attention to that kind of stuff. But even more important is on the debrief or the after action side, where I look at it and I say, well, what were the things that turned this possibility into a low probability? What were the things I could control? Was there anything I could have done better? The answer is always yes. Whether or not that's enough to change it is yet another question. But let's take a look at Fisherman Joe as he is here on Muravanka, driving along in his automobile. So he's got the T26E5. It's a pure tier 8 battle. That's a good setup for him. He's going over to where he knows he can fight, hold down. Now, I'll start right here to me, and we'll see how this game progresses, and we'll talk about whether I was right or not. I would have gone over to the east. I just find that to be the more important terrain. The good news going over to the west, in this case, no artillery. So artillery really pounds people sitting around these corners, but he's going to where this tank presumably is going to have a strength, depending on how he plays it over here. So there's one divergence from the very beginning. I would have been going over to the east, win the forest, and then come back and beat the guys up over here. But let's see how that turns out and if my assessment of the situation has any bearing. You can see that he's pretty much out here alone. He's got a couple guys hanging back. Looks like the others are slowly coming their way. And all the mediums, lots of Skodas in this game because it's the Skoda event going on. All the mediums are heading over to the forest, and he immediately comes around this corner. Again, we're going to get to whether it's important or not, but holy cow, look how far out ahead of his support he is. So let's see what happens. Like I said, a couple mediums are showing up over there on the west side, and he's really zoomed out when he drives right here. Quite the third person. Looks like maybe a zoom out mod potentially, or maybe out to the very end of the standard. And he immediately comes around and he finds this guy. What about that guy? Right there, and puts 215. Notice that the T26E5 has a relatively low alpha. It's a 240 gun right there. Gets a little spotting out of it as well as somebody else hits him, maybe the T69 or somebody. And it doesn't look like there's any TDs on the one column right there. And that's the reason why I don't particularly like going here early, is just eating a bunch of TD shots. I'm very surprised, actually. I'm just going to try to poke one into the top of the KV4. He is carrying a good amount of gold. He's got 20 rounds. I might go to number 2 right here because I know I'm facing a KV4 and I just need a little bit of extra pen, even though he's being smart and going after the weak spot. Looks like he gets one through. I would have pressed 2 right there to increase the possibility, but knowledge of weak spots, and he's really punching some holes into these guys, and that's a nice job right there. Somebody does take a shot. Might have been the ISU 152. So a TD did show up in that place. The KV4 has a relatively quick reload, but the T26E5 is inside his reload, so you can get multiple shots off depending on the timing of the KV4 shot before he can reload. And the AMX65T is getting absolutely roughed up, as well as the KV4. KV4 doesn't have a lot of options. He's got that great big tumor just sticking out, and he's not getting any shots on Fisherman, who's doing a nice job of minimizing his exposure. Somebody came around the other side, but it looks like they dealt with that guy, and things are going okay right now. He's really just farming the heck out of these 2 heavies, and not pressing 2 has not really hurt him at all. You can see that he's getting a green indicator every time. Now he's going to have to get around and start sorting out this 65. These 2 guys were just so passive. Why they didn't move up here and try to take these guys on a little bit, but they are facing quite a few numbers. Now look what's happened over in the forest over there. Meanwhile, on the east side, moving on up, the red team has walloped his team and is now trying to track down the FV and the ISU. Okay, so let's talk about this. We have won on the east. We have lost. Sorry, we have lost on the east. We have won on the west. Now, everyone kind of knows, I'm pretty sure, what Guido is going to say. Go back to cap. Just 180. We're going to see what he does. He's pushing in right now. 180, go back to cap and deal with these guys. There is a stirve hanging out here as well. So now you're pushing into a camoed stirve, which is fantastically hold down, which is a fantastic hold down and sniper, camo sniper. He's probably fallen back. I'd imagine he's back in one of those dips back there. And down goes the FV. And the team is sort of, and this is very interesting because this is what happens in pubs. A couple guys decide to go back. A couple guys decide to push against what is more or less a organized enemy. Now let's find out how many of the enemy go back, because if this was organized gameplay, probably what you'd see is both teams would go back towards cap with maybe one guy scouting the other guy's cap just to see what was going on and make sure that they're not coming around that way. But in pubs, usually you get kind of a split. Half are going to go one way and half are going to go the other. And frankly, it's the one that reacts to their own cap the best that usually ends up winning. Rarely right now is the red team going to be able to jump on the cap and win. There's just too many green team guys left. The same for the green team. So really pushing into, at this point, the enemy cap is more or less useless. And you got a piece of him, but his track, I mean, so he just backs off. And that's the problem with trying to chase down TDs that are camoed up and in defensive positions. You really don't have a whole lot of help, although the prototype is now following. And somebody has clicked back on there saying, yo, we got a problem over here. So he's going to try to track down this dude. He ends up missing there. The Sturv's going to have kind of a hard time fighting. It looks like he's looking to sort himself out. Get after that. There you go. Get after that hatch right there. And then the Proto comes in. God, the Proto miss. That's a bummer. There you go. Work over that hatch. Those guys should take him down. No, yeah, don't expose yourself too much. And down he goes. So that was a good tag team. Now, taking a look at it now, this looks more or less sewn up. And I've already told you what's happened, so this is very interesting. Let's find out here if the green team attempts to drive out into the open and get on the cap, or if potentially it's just a good job by the red team fighting them. I'm not really sure. The prototype's moving in there. So we have all of the enemy tanks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is one missing, it looks like. He takes a little snap in the general area. You'll see Skill do that quite a bit, especially if he knows he's going to be reloaded. By the time he gets into draw distance, he'll fire into where he knows that that spot is. I do that at times as well, but Skill does it quite a bit. And we'll move on in here, and you'll find out in the after action whether you actually hit somebody. Don't really lose anything as long as you have enough ammo to do so. Some tanks you do have to be careful with that kind of deal. The other thing is to be careful doing it if you know that you're going to have another shot on somebody, but if that's the only shot in town, why not take it? See what happens. So move around here, the T-27, and we've gone back. So I think that's a good idea. Now look what's happened. What did I just say? The green team is all jumping onto the cap. Look at the last spotted positions of the red team. Look at the last spotted positions of the red team. Clearly some have come back, and I would suspect all of them, maybe minus one, are setting up for shots, and his whole team is jumping onto the cap. So the T-44 is lit. He's over there. No shot, so he must be down below that little ridge. There's the Kanonen. Nicely done. Zoom on in there. Going for a tracking shot. I like it. Unfortunately, it moved. Didn't quite get to it. And now the team is on the cap. We have a JP watching our cap. There goes one of them. And I'm assuming they're probably taking fire from just about every tank that the enemy has. There's the Skirta. The Skirta is right there. We're going to zoom, zoom, zoom. Oh, nice. I like that. I thought that was a great shot right there, man. That was a nice one to take. Even though you weren't fully zoomed in, he was backing up, and that's the shot you had. Just poke one in there. Nice thing about this tank is it's got a really good reload as far as speed goes. Low alpha, but a nice reload speed. So those two are still on cap. There goes another, and we are down to one guy on cap who is clearly spotted and looks like he is doing nothing to try to get out of that situation. Now look at your team, completely scattered. The JP sitting at the cap. I would be very surprised if even one of the enemy was anywhere near the green cap. The 5100 is over here supporting, probably the JP2. That's what he's thinking. But guess what? There's nobody over there. Maybe one. Let's find out if one shows up. And there goes the ISM's cap points. And it looks like Fisherman Joe is pressing in here thinking, holy cow, this is not going well. We had this in the bag, and down goes the ISM. Now we've got a Skoda T-27, and guess what? Now you're in the crossfire, right? Your guys were on the cap. They were in the crossfire. Now you're moving across this open area. And at this point, I would not have pushed in. I saw what you were doing. I'm assuming you were attempting to support those guys, maybe get these dudes lit so some return fire, some effective return fire could happen. But right now, you're in big trouble pushing in here. So I would probably have just got out of there, fallen back to the ridge line near your cap, and uh-oh, now you're spotted. Oh, geez, you're spot. Yeah, there's a big TD right there. Going to try to get around. Oh, he missed. Very good. T-27 misses. You get into some low ground. That's good. And then you take a Skoda shot. And we're running back this way. So clicking there, I didn't see that. Did you take a shot from that direction? If you did, then good. There's at least one of them over there. The Scorpion rages in. He rages across the open while you're going the other way. And no support from him. And this is a pretty classic example. Earlier what I was talking about, where teams just sort of scatter and start chasing, and they see that winning picture, which, you know, 3 or 4 tanks up, looking good, 3 guys on the cap, hey, here we go, we're going to win. And then people scatter looking for hit points. Some guys go back knowing the cap is in danger. Other guys are the kind of guys that you just push towards cap, and all of a sudden you got a complete disaster from what was a near sure win right there. So just like I talked about when we started, the possibility and the probability, there was a point at which the probability of winning was pretty high. It was pretty high, but because of the actions of the team, and to some extent your actions right there, all of a sudden the probability starts to lower, and we got a 3v4. And it looks like Fisherman's just going to go straight back to defend. The JP looks like he's following with the same idea. The 5100 looks to be lit by the Skoda, and down he goes. The Skoda takes the guy out, and now all of a sudden it's a 2v4, 2 autoloaders and 2 hard-hitting mobile TDs, which are going to be hard to get away from, especially if they push in any kind of aggressive manner. And now sort of this 240 Alpha gun is working against us a little bit. Unless we can get some standoff and get a few shots into these guys, if they show up right near us, we're going to have a hard time finishing. All of a sudden we got some kind of crazy, I don't know if that's your computer or mine, the FPS just went nuts right there. Assuming it's yours. And we're going to run into the wall. That's not helpful. I hate it when that happens. That's one of those kind of intangibles. If your computer starts going crazy or your internet starts sucking, that is obviously something that can hurt your possibilities, your probability of a win. So we're following each other around this corner. I'm not really sure. So I would not have gone all the way around like this. This is not deep enough in the trees. You have a lot more options falling back if you don't push towards the edge. And all of a sudden, we're just going right at this guy. And I guess you thought maybe that's all you had, but I definitely would have hung out in those bushes back there and made them come to me. Absolutely. I guess at this point we're just looking for damage. And I just kind of point where he was and take that shot. Not a bad idea. Another shot, and it's all over but the shouting right now. Obviously good with the tank. He's got the thing 3 marked, so that's fantastic. Nice job on that. Push into that T27. You know, he's probably clipped, so I think I would have just gone after him. Right now, you're just backing up into his buddies. Obviously, that's kind of open ground, so maybe they get shots on your back, but sitting right here is also a losing game, a losing option. And I guess you're probably just waiting to see if you can't get one more shot into somebody who shows up. I check 6. Someone's going to show up on your 6 here pretty soon. That guy's some kind of extra armor that can be used. Not great, but at least it's something. Put that between you and the enemy. And we're just sort of waiting for the end. We're just waiting for the end, aren't we? The bitter end. 3,000, there he goes. 3,996. 540 assist. And a nice game. So, the question at the beginning was it possible to win? I think it was. I don't think it's necessarily all you. That goes back to, you know, the beginning of my discussion, and I enjoy this discussion quite a bit, the possibility and probability. Theoretically, if you play a perfect game every time, you will win every time. That's just the way it is. And people say, well, that's not possible because you have other players, but you have to define the perfect game. You kill everybody on the map. You take every hit point, you kill everybody, and you take no damage. Probably doesn't matter whether your team dies or not, unless you want to talk about the shutout vice the perfect game, that kind of thing. Not probable, right? Not probable. But if you go from that in your debrief, in your analysis of what you did, if you start from that position and work backwards, then you're always going to be critical of everything you did, such that even if it worked out, you might say, hey, I could have done that just a little bit better to move that marker towards the perfect game, which is so improbable as to be probably impossible as far as reality goes. So I am mixing a little bit of theory and real-world ideas in here, but it speaks to your attitude about it. If you're always willing to try to learn to get better, if you're always willing to look at even great games, let's say he'd won this one. If you're always willing to even look at great games and come up with a couple things you could have done better, then you're always going to be thinking about improvement, and rarely will you ever blame other people, even if other people are actually to blame for their actions, for the things that they did, or responsible. Let's put it that way more than blame. Let's call it responsible for their actions. I just find that kind of mindset to be better in the learning environment than to always be running around and saying, I did my best, there was no more I could do, it's somebody else's fault, or some combination of that. Now, you can always feel like you did your best at the moment, but when you analyze it, you need to be able to understand that there was something else you could have done at that moment that would have made it better. You know, it's the old economist question, better than what? All right. That's enough of that. I just thought that was a great video or a great replay for that, especially based on the question and the fact that he had such a great game, that nearly 4,000 damage, and still ended up losing. So, you know, how do we figure out how to win more? All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I do appreciate that. That whole discussion always gets a lot of response, so I'm looking forward to that. Remember, keep it civil, keep it cool down there. Everybody can... we can have disagreements. It's kind of weird, but we can actually disagree and still come away from it friends. All right, y'all. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, and we will see you.